You know, we hear about a lot of different kinds of Islam. Radical Islam, Reform Islam, Moderate Islam, Shia Islam, Sunni, Sufi. So how many kinds of Islam are there? Well, one person has put together a list that there's over 150 different kinds of Islam, but these are all minor variations. But the answer we're going to come up with is there's only one Islam. Let's examine this. Now, you can't understand any Islam until you can answer this question. What is Islam? The answer is simple. It's the Quran plus the Sunnah of Muhammad. And what is the Sunnah of Muhammad? Well, it's the Hadith, his traditions, plus the Sirah, his biography. So basically, Islam is Allah plus Muhammad. Now, one of the most common questions is, what is the difference between Sunni Islam and Shia Islam? Well, there are some differences, but there's many more similarities. One of the ways they differ is this. They have different ideas on who the caliph should be. The Sunni believe that the caliph should be the best Muslim. The Shia believe that the caliph must be a blood relative of Ali, who is Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law. So there they differ. And they also have different hadith, and we'll see why. Now the Shia, which means party of Ali, Ali is very important. Now, the divisions between Sunni and Shia go back to an accident. Aisha wound up spending a lot of time with a young jihadi warrior through an accident. Her spending time with this young jihadi warrior created a great deal of gossip, so much gossip that it filled Medina and wound up being heard by Muhammad. So Muhammad went to Ali and says, "What should we do here?" Ali gave some advice. He said, "Women are plentiful and can be exchanged one for another." In other words, drop Aisha, get you another wife, deal over. Well, Muhammad didn't like that solution, so Allah furnished him a solution to his problem, which is common. Anytime Muhammad had a problem, Allah would solve it for him. And the verses came down and it said there were no witnesses, and you need 4 witnesses to prove sexual infidelity, and so there's no guilt, and that the liars who had repeated these rumors should be given 80 lashes. Then this drove a wedge between Ali and Aisha, this comment, "Women are plentiful." Now, after Muhammad's death, Aisha became very politically active and played a role in the caliphs. The caliphs were Abu Bakr, her father, then Uthman and Umar. She also did something else which we know her for today. She created many of the bases for hadith. Bukhari is filled with hadith that were originated by Aisha. The Sunnis love Aisha. They call her the mother of the believers. The Shia intensely dislike her and call her the enemy of Ali and do not use her hadith. So Shia and Sunni use different hadith. Now, this is not important to us because when it comes to the kafir and jihad, they're all the same. But both the Shia and the Sunni Islam are the same kind of Islam in that they depend on the Quran plus the hadith. Now, what about that radical Islam, the one we hear about when there's a bombing or somebody runs over people with a truck? Well, before we can examine radical Islam, we need to answer the question, what is Islam? Well, it's Quran plus Sunnah. Is there a radical Quran? No. Is there a radical Sunnah? No. So it's just Islam. But what about moderate Islam, the one that sounds so good? Well, what is Islam? Quran and Sunnah. Is the Quran moderate? No, it's just the Quran. Is the Sunnah moderate? No. The reason they call it moderate is they just ignore the jihad hadith, but it's still there for others to use. Now, you may have heard of Wahhabi Islam. It was created, well, actually it was a reform movement by Al-Wahhab, and they call themselves actually the Salafi, which means the first generations. Wahhabi Islam is simply a strict adherence to, guess what, the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, what about those wonderful Sufis? I know a little bit about the Sufis because when I was 30 years old, 50 years ago, I studied Sufism. I was told it was Western mysticism. But the more I studied it, and I went to lectures like Pir Vilayat Khan and Sufi dances, the more I studied it, the more I realized there were some dark shadows. Didn't know I have a name for them, but now I do have a name for those dark shadows because it turns out the Sufis have the same goal as the jihadists, Sharia. Here's an example of a Sufi that's not so moderate. Daniel Pearl was a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, and he went to interview Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, a Sufi in Pakistan. Well, he wound up getting his head cut off in a video and his body put into 10 pieces and it was scattered around. So much for the peace of the Sufis. There's only one Islam. All forms of Islam are simply Quran plus Sunnah, Muhammad plus Quran. Moderation simply means ignoring the bad stuff, the jihad. So that's what moderation means. Extreme or radical means using all of the Sunnah of the Quran, which includes the jihad verses. Moderation is simply not using the jihad doctrine or some other part they don't like, and ignoring this doctrine is called interpretation. You've all heard about it all depends on how you interpret it. Well, that's what you choose to leave out. We also hear that moderate Islam is the solution to Islam. This is nonsense because there's only one Islam, and moderate Islam means you ignoring part of it. Or that moderate Muslims can be the solution to Islam. This is patently absurd. Listen closely. Islam creates Muslims. Muslims cannot create Islam. Muslim merely means someone who submits to Islam. So, there's only one Islam, Quran plus Muhammad, and interpretation just chooses what to ignore. How many kinds of Islam are there? One Islam, and that's the final answer.